provides strategic and clinical direction for Oracle's federal business, including the Department of VA, Department of Defense, U.S. Coast Guard, and Center for Disease Control. He leads the development of the vision and strategy for the largest healthcare transformation in history. Prior to joining Oracle Cerner, Dr. Ellzy completed 26 years of federal service with 22 years in active military service, and the last 4 as a civilian. He retired from the U.S. Navy in December 2018, where he was a chief medical informatics officer for Navy medicine. He has like 3 paragraphs beyond that. I promise you, he's incredible. I've gotten to see him live and in action. We're excited to have as our moderator, Mr. Dr. James Ellzy, Vice President, Federal Health Executive and Market Lead for Oracle Cerner. If you want to join us, Dr. Ellzy. He will be speaking with Congressman Don Bacon, who during his career in the Air Force specialized in electronic warfare, intelligence, and reconnaissance. His career highlights include 2 tours as a wing commander at Ramstein Air Base in Germany and Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue, Nebraska, and group commander at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. He also has another 2 paragraphs of incredible military service.
We'll cut it down.
But upon his retirement in 2014, he served as the military advisor to Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, where he specialized in military affairs. So he is one of us, a HillVet, still is a HillVet. And we're just incredibly grateful and thankful to both of you gentlemen. And Dr. Ellzy, I'll let you take it from here.
Give you the salute. It's good to see everybody here. And he's a strategic and clinical expert. That scares me.
Yeah. You're good, sir. You're good. So Congressman Bacon, thank you for joining us and for your incredible military service. We're saying 30 years, 26 years here, so thank you for that. I read through some of the information regarding the new quality of life panel and some of the conditions our service members are dealing with. I want to get into that, but perhaps I think our audience would just be interested in you telling us your story.
My general story.
Your general story.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love the HillVets. 2% of our staffs are veterans. 6% of America are veterans. We could do better to get more veterans into our staffs, whether it's congressional staffs, personal staffs. But I've tried to do that. I mean, I have 4 retired veterans on our team. One I worked with at Ramstein, so he's one of the smartest guys I know. And we have a lot of veterans on our team, and I'm very proud of that. And I love working with Justin and the HillVets. It's got a great mission. I was trying to hopefully get one of the rooms at the HillVet house, where I take care of my housing problem. But now my background is I was a farm kid, and at the age of 13, my dad got very active in politics with Reagan in 1976. He subscribed to 2 political magazines, and I read them both every week. And so I became an activist in junior high and high school, county campaigns, you name it. I remember in 8th grade, Miss Macklin, by the way, a Democrat, she told me, and we're sort of siloed even back then. I didn't know any, because my whole family was Republican. So it startled me when she told me that. But she said, does anybody here know one Supreme Court justice? I raised my hand, I gave her all 9 and how they broke out with conservative, liberal, and moderate swing. And she's like, I was like, that's impressive, isn't it? She goes, no, that's a little weird. But I was that kid. I love that, and I love geography. There's just things God makes us all unique. So I was an active, then I graduated at 16, went to college. I was a young college Republican. I was the opinion page editor, and I graduated there at 20. I worked for a congressman, and I had it in my heart, I want to get involved in elective politics. I remember saying that in D.C. I worked for a guy named Ed Madigan. And so he said, well, you can just stay here and be in D.C. and be part of politics. I said, I feel like I'm one of those retail guys. I want to be out there working, wherever home is. But then I realized, too, I was 20 years old. What do I offer? And I love military history. So I ended up joining the Air Force, went through our officer training school, and I thought I'd do it for 4 or 8 years, but I did 30. Long story short, when I retired, my very first day of retirement, I gave a speech for a congressman from Omaha, who I knew because I was the base commander there. And I expected him to win. He'd been there for 16 years, and I thought, my goal is to work hard for him, but then see where I could fit in. And so I was going to do a little reconnaissance, marched reconnaissance, right, in a way. But he ended up losing. And so then I ended up getting recruited to try to replace that seat or take that seat back for the GOP. So that's sort of my story. And I got elected in 2016 and been in since 2017. And I serve on the Armed Services Committee and the Ag Committee, which is perfect for Nebraska.
Thank you.
That may be a longer answer than what you wanted.
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. So many of the individuals with us today are interested in running for office themselves. What advice would you share with them?
Well, you got to have a hunger for it. I did. I think God makes us all unique. And I think if you've been wired to get involved in elective politics, then by all means do it. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can do it as a candidate. I had a guy, a campaign manager, that's all he's thought about his whole life, was how to be a campaign manager. So he was wired that way. You have other folks that like to work on the fundraising side and messaging side. You got to get in that niche that gives you passion. But I would say if you want to run, you got to have, you need to be able to get a 1 minute who you are. So in my 1 minute was I served 30 years, I commanded 5 times, Ramstein and Offutt, the 2 of the 3 largest bases in the Air Force. I did missile defense in Israel, long-range missile defense, and so I want to bring this expertise to Congress. And then you got to have a 1 minute, what do you believe in? What's your passions? And it's good to have that, like 3 of them, typically. You need a simple message. These are the 3 things I want to do when I go to Congress and what I want to stand for. So that's, I think it's important to have a story and a message. Military people have an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is you have a good story. And by the way, even if you're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter which way, 90% of the veterans want to get things done. I'm not saying there's a few outliers, and you may know a few in Congress, I know them. But 90% of us want to work with the other side to fix things for our country. We want to solve problems, because that's what we do in the military. And so I think that's the advantage there, and people like the story you bring. Here's the disadvantage. If you're in a purple district, or even in a far red or far blue district, and you're part of one of those parties, it is hard to raise money as a veteran. Why? Because I had 16 assignments. Did I know all the business community in Omaha, where I'm currently representing? So it's the guy I ran against had done 16 years in the state legislature, now was in Congress, had run for mayor of Omaha. He knew every mid-level on-up businessman and more in the entire district. I knew hardly anybody. So that's the challenge. You're going to have to raising money in the resources and building a team as a veteran is challenging because you don't have that deep Rolodex from wherever you're from. If you're like me, I had 16 assignments. It was very hard to have that. So you got a better story. People want veterans in Congress, but yet you got some resource challenges. And so what does that mean? You got to probably get a team around you that can help compensate and do that and help you make that challenge. So I was probably 5 to 10 points down up until August prior to our November election. A game changer for me was having the Speaker of the House come out, and I had one of the senior businessmen invite all the other businessmen to this thing with Speaker Ryan, and it broke the ice for me in a good way. But I was fortunate. So
how'd you get the Speaker to come out for you? Just asked?
I was in a R+1 district running as a Republican, and I think they know that I think they saw the numbers. We had my opponent had a 60% favorable. I had a 60% favorable. He just knew I needed resources. And I saw the Speaker came out, and I ended up being the only GOP pickup against an incumbent in the House or the Senate that year. Wow. That's another part. Defeating an incumbent is hard. First of all, they had to be pretty tough to get there to begin with. They're in front of crowds 4, 5, 6 times a day. And if you're a challenger, you may not have, so you don't have the experience, you don't have that network they've built. It is an uphill climb to do that. That's one of the reasons why I support term limits, because I just think we have so many people entrenched in DC.
So moving on to the quality of life panel, which is an incredible undertaking. Why did this seem so necessary right now?
So on the Republican side, in the HASC, the passion had been up until this year. There's a story there. People want to be part of I want to be working on buying bombers, building ships, working on our Army and working on cyber. That's where the Republicans sort of gravitate to. On the Democrat side, they sort of gravitate to the personnel side, on the personnel issues. So that's just sort of the unique culture that we have in the Armed Services Committee. But I saw an opportunity a year ago. I want to be a subcommittee chair. I want to be in the senior leadership in the Armed Services. That's what I love doing. And I had enough anecdotal data that there was junior enlisted on SNAP. So I go to the chairman, I go, hey, the future chairman, he was the ranking member at the point, Mike Rogers. I go, Mike, we got enlisted people on SNAP in the military. I think that's unacceptable, don't you? And he got pissed. Yeah, that's bad. I'm going to fix that. So he was agitated. So then he got up in front of our whole conference, 212 at the time, before the election. He goes, if I get to become the chairman, my number one issue is making sure that our junior enlisted have the adequate resources so they don't qualify for SNAP. And I'm like, that was me. I know where that came from. But I also laid out the fact that we've cut housing allowance by 5%. And that affects people who live on off base, because that's 5% less, and now they're going to come out of their paycheck to pay for food. It also affects on-base housing, because you have privatized base housing. That's a 5% cut. That means 5% less being modernized or upkeep for your home, maintenance and modernization. And then we knew we got 1 year waiting list for daycare. I had heard a little bit about medical. I'll come back to that. This is a much bigger issue than I even realized. When I was in 2014, I had great medical care. I could see the doctor that day, and all the flyers could anyway, because it was all about keeping you flying. We've eroded that, so I'll come back to that. But I didn't know that was a problem when I made this case to Chairman Mike Rogers. We also had some challenges with spouse employment. I moved my wife 16 times, hard for her to get a job. How do we do better on that? And so I laid this out to Mike Rogers, said, I want to be the military personnel subcommittee chair, which nobody volunteers for. And he goes, and what else offer? I says, I won't ask to move off right away. I will do it for 6 years if I'm reelected. You can have me for the entire 6 years, and I want to be the PhD of military personnel for the Republican side. You got it. We want you. So suddenly it became a flashpoint, military personnel. And so what Mike Rogers did, he says, I'm going to put one person in on military personnel, but I'm going to carve out the quality of life, and you're going to be able to work this for 1 year, and then we got a spot for you. But I want you to work this for 1 year, and you're going to give recommendations to the HASC how we're going to fix some of these issues, and we're going to start you up in June. So next month I get to do this.
So are there others working with you on the panel?
There's going to be. We have Ms. Houlihan from Pennsylvania is going to be the ranking member. I know that we have Jen Kiggins from Virginia Beach is going to be on the Republican side with me. She volunteered, and I demand is too strong of a word, but I asked for her to be on there like that. And so she's going to be on there. So those are the three we know. But we're going to have, I don't know how, they're going to have to determine, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Smith, the ranking member, do they want it, they want a 10-person panel. They haven't determined the size yet. But I know Houlihan is going to be my partner on the Democrat side. I know Kiggins will be with me. But this is what I want to do. When I talk to our team when it's put together, I don't want us to be Republican or Democrat. These are not Republican or Democrat issues. These are veterans issues. Veteran congressmen want to step up and solve this for the military. So I don't want this, I want to minimize as much as I can the Republican and Democrat makeup. We're going to be Americans, veterans on this subcommittee taking care of the military.
So what is an issue that you think is perhaps Congress's radar that really needs and deserves more attention and awareness?
On the quality of life or more broadly?
More broadly.
Well, this is the area that concerns me most is, a lot of people, if you talk to Republicans, what are the top issues? You're going to hear border, you may hear inflation, you may hear crime. I personally think all these three can be solved with leadership. I can give you a plan for all three. And if the voters support it, I think I could whip all three of these, in my view. We have bigger issues it's going to take bipartisanship, consensus building, which we have a lack of right now in Congress. It's 100% or zero. If I don't get all my way 100%, we're going to get zero. That's the mindset right now. It don't work. James Madison designed a system of government that it takes consensus to solve things, right, with a bicameral and checks and balances. I could go on and on. The three things that scare me, we're talking about, right, it's not under the radar, but it's debt, $32 trillion debt. We're going to add $1.9 trillion, almost $2 trillion every year if we do nothing. Social Security is going to go insolvent. Medicare is going to go insolvent. We've got to tackle this. But then we got the problem with China and Russia. We got to have a military that can confront that, and we got to be building an alliance system of free, loving countries to stand up to these two. Maybe Iran as well. But that's going to cost money. So now we got budget issues, and we got to have a strong enough military. And then I got this third issue that is under the radar right now that I think Americans cannot ignore. We have a problem with our youth in multiple ways in developing our youth. 30% increase in depression. As an American, I find that terrible. Why do we have a 30% increase in depression for high school kids? That's unacceptable. Now, I got some theories on it, and I could come back to it, but as an American, I see that as one of the bigger threats then. There's something, and then something that all the HillVets are probably familiar with, only 22% of our 18-year-olds could qualify to get in the military today. Most of it's physical fitness, but some of it could be taking attention to deficit drugs any time in their lifetime. I go on and on. That's an issue. We're not producing enough youth that are ready for the trades, for electricians, welders, carpenters, truck. That's where the demand is at, but we are woefully underproducing. And you can get $80,000 a year starting off as a plumber, right? I'm going to start carrying a pipe wrench. I want a part-time job in D.C. But my point is, so I just think there's an area here, but you can't get to all these three things in a hyper-polarized environment. And that is what I see the challenges right now facing Congress.
Thank you. So obviously we have some bias, and the title of this CAPCON's conference is Veterans and Innovation. So how can we, a company like Oracle, which is deeply invested in this community with a lifetime electronic health record and an emphasis on data, be helpful in resolving some of these long-standing issues you are contending with?
One of the issues that's under the radar right now is healthcare for our active duty, and I think you could say by default our veterans as well. When I left in 2014, I felt pretty good about where our healthcare was at. And it wasn't on the radar, but I think we've consolidated a lot with the hope you could take money, but that money didn't come down after consolidations. Our TRICARE fees have not kept up. Our doctors today, when they see something with TRICARE, they're losing money. So therefore, they don't want to take care of it. So we got this issue, but our systems are antiquated. So I can see Oracle helping. This thing about trying to merge the DOD and the VA, it ain't happening yet. We got to find a way to have a more seamless transition. I know we're talking about it, but there's an area that's very lucrative. It shouldn't be a total rebuild of your healthcare history going to the VA. I think we could use help in things like this. I would like to know, okay, if you have a SNAP threshold of what your earnings are as say a married couple with 2 kids, what is that threshold? And then how many military people fall below that threshold? I can't get that data anywhere right now.
Okay.
I would like to know that data because I want to know if you're a two-striper and you're married, what is that threshold to keep you out of SNAP? And our pay should not be below it. But right now, hopefully I can find somebody who can give me these answers. But we need to be able, I want to have a scientific mindset here for how do we go about tackling these issues. We know we have a problem. We don't know the scope of it. And it can't just be a wag. I got to be able to come to the committee, this senior airman, or whatever, this E3, if you want to keep them out of the SNAP program, needs to have this level of pay with a BAS and a housing allowance. And right now we're $8,000 short. That's what I want to come into the Armed Services Committee and solve.
Well, I'm sure some of my friends in the room are writing that down, so we can see if we can help you with that. All politics aside, if you were able to snap your fingers and make one major policy change for the military-connected community, what would it be and why?
I'll give you one that's more military force. I think the biggest issue we have today is in 1990, the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union fell. We decided to lower our posture for nuclear weapons. I've gotten very involved in nuclear deterrence. And so if I just go through since 1990, we've not invested really in the bombers, even though we have the B-2, we got 20 B-2s, something like that. We have 30-year-old submarines. We have 62-year-old B-52s. We have 50-year-old ICBMs. Right now we're rebuilding all of that, and we're building that force. But our posture when it comes to survivability is still 1990. And my biggest concern is Russia is acting very provocative in Ukraine. You guys know they're saber rattling with nukes. They're threatening nukes. They're bullying. They're intimidating. And I think people at their word when they put threats out there. I don't just think it's bluff, right? And then we got China building a nuclear force to match ours. I think the number one issue we have right now is our nuclear command and control survivability. And I think we need to go back to the 24-hour-a-day looking glass mission, or that we have a command element that's away from the base, away from the White House, away from the Pentagon, that's survivable. Why? I don't want to ever use it, but I want the Russians and Chinese to know that they can never be assured of taking us out for deterrence, because I don't ever want them to try. And so I think the number one thing that I think we got to fix is nuclear command and control and survivability. When it comes to the personnel side, it is the quality of life, but I think healthcare for the veterans and the military is quickly becoming an issue that we need to get our arms around, because when I talk to active duty people and they have to wait 2 months to get an appointment, that's not right. And I know our veterans are even in a probably even tougher situation than that. Healthcare is one of the reasons I joined the military in 1985. I wasn't planning on doing a career, but I knew while I was in, my family and I had good health care. If I did a career, I'd have health care. But I think we're losing that promise of a benefit, and it's being eroded.
Well, I've reached the end of my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the group?
I'll just share, I know we got a diverse group here. When I came in, I'll back up. When I was a 1-star in the Pentagon, I wanted to take on electronic warfare. Anybody here in that smart on that area? We got a couple. So I was a compass call jammer. I was a rivet joint SIGINT guy, and I was information operations in Iraq. So I went into the Pentagon. I said, hey, I was talking to those 3 stars as a 1-star, and I said, we don't have anybody that's really in charge of electronic warfare. And 1990s, we had the best in the world. We've let it atrophy. There's nobody in charge. We're underfunded. We don't have a strategy. And I was told by a particular 3-star, he was a nice guy, but he goes, Don, it's just not our priority. We got B-21s, we got ICBMs, we got KC-46s. That's our priority, F-35s. And as you looked around the military, it was all like that. Maybe the Navy was a little better than the rest on this. And I couldn't get any traction. Then I get elected. And I'm on the Armed Services Committee. And I approach this in front of the committee. They go, Don, you got it. You wear the ring. And I became the chair of the Electronic Warfare Caucus. And so I went to the military, and there was just no appetite. I was like, who's in charge of electronic warfare? And all the services would say, our vice service chief. He's in charge of 1,000 things. Who do I fire if EW ain't going well? Oh, there is nobody. I said, well, we're going to fix that. So I wrote in a law that the joint staff has to have a 2-star in charge of EW, so that we put a finger on their chest. And every service should at least have a 1-star. So that's what we got today. Then I put in the law, you got to have a strategy for EW. They call it EMSO, Electronic Magnetic Spectrum Operations. And then we need an implementation plan, how you're going to deliver this and fund it. And now a lot of the services have their own funding line for EM or EMSO. And I'm just proud of that. But I couldn't do it as a 1-star. I couldn't get no traction. But today we're pointed the right way on electronic warfare. And I don't think we're as far as I want to be, but we're pointed the right way and we're moving out the right direction. So that's just one case in point of, I feel pretty good about making a difference. We're all about making an impact. And that's just an area of impact that I feel pretty good about. I remember having nobody wanting to do it, but when you write it in a law, it changes things.
Funny that.
So that's just the funny side. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate the HillVets. Thanks for serving. I don't know about you all. I get a little tired of people say, thanks for serving, thank you for service. I said, dang, God, I had a good time. I think 95% of what I did in the military, I loved. I was lucky to get paid. And so somebody will say, what's the 5%? It was the Pentagon. Yeah.